Welcome to Something Extra. I am your host, Maria Sivertson. On today's show, we will be discussing the training that law enforcement can take to help keep individuals with Down syndrome and other developmental disabilities safe in our community. Hi, and welcome to Something Extra. Today I have Officer Jack Darnell with me from the Middleburg Heights Police Department. Hi, Jack.
Hi.
How are you?
Wonderful.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Good. How long have you been a police officer?
So I've been a police officer for about 10 years now. I started with the city of Parma Heights, and then I lateral transferred over to the city of Middleburg Heights. I believe it was 5 years ago now.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell me what are some of the challenges that law enforcement face when they deal with people with with developmental disabilities? Excuse me.
So law enforcement has interactions with individuals with developmental disabilities in a number of different settings. Oftentimes we'll be dispatched with our medical emergency responders to assist in different medical emergencies, and that will create one set of interactions. But more often when we are the primary responder, in the city of Middleburg Heights specifically, we're seeing a lot of responses to our group homes. The city has a number of group homes that serve different people with developmental disabilities or different disabilities of any kind, and a lot of times they call for extra assistance from police officers when clients are having behaviors or when clients are in some kind of distress.
Mm-hmm. And then, so you go to the situation or to the call, and then what happens from there? So
we will get dispatched to those calls. We arrive, and generally speaking, police officers will try to take a support role to the staff that's already on scene. These group homes are usually staffed by people that know the individuals who live there, have a level of expertise in dealing with their specific clients, and sometimes they just need an extra set of hands or an extra set of eyes, somebody that can maybe de-escalate a situation and assist them with the end result that they kind of direct for us. Whether that is getting a client to an emergency room for a medical evaluation, or if it's just separating two clients who are not getting along or getting a client back to a safe space. For example, we have some clients in our city who will walk off property. So they'll leave the house because they're upset, and staff can't necessarily follow because they have other people they have to care for. So that will be where law enforcement can come in, and we can make sure people stay safe until they're calm enough to return them home.
So is this, or what was it that inspired you to bring training to law enforcement?
So the idea kind of struck me a couple years ago. I took on the primary role as a school resource officer in our middle school, and I had more daily one-on-one interactions with individuals with developmental disabilities. One young man in particular had a lot of interactions with him. He had autism, and he would have violent outbursts, and they would call me to come and assist with those things because he was a relatively big young man, and he was pretty strong, and if he wanted to cause some problems, he could. And I realized that I didn't really know how to best help him. And so with working with the school professionals and working with the individuals who work directly with this young man, I was able to gain skills and learn. And over the 2 years that I was in that building, I saw mine and his interactions became much more positive, and there appeared to be much less risk of harm to myself and to him.
He started to trust you.
He started to trust me. And that led me to understand that if law enforcement in general could gain an understanding of what individuals with different disabilities may need, we could serve them better. And also, if individuals with developmental disabilities understood what law enforcement was asking of them, or what we needed to have a positive outcome from their behavior, they were able to learn how to help us help them.
And so how did you get this training started?
So a couple years ago, working with Berea City Schools, I kind of came up with the idea, and I reached out to their staff that works with their behavioral units and their special needs units, and basically ask, hey, can we put some police officers together with your teams and try to learn a little bit of how we can better serve our populations. And they were on board, and they allowed me to kind of run with it. My chief, Chief Tamba at Middleburg Heights Police, he was very supportive of the idea. We've reached out to additional organizations to help us, put together some resources, and it kind of all came together because a lot of different people saw the need and saw the value in the program.
Definitely,
and so we kind of ran with it.
That's how we met.
Absolutely.
And where is the training held?
So the past couple of years, the training's been held at Berea High School. We've been holding it at Berea High School. The superintendent there has been extremely helpful, allowing us to use her space, allowing her staff to be a part of the program. So we've been doing it there, and we hope to continue that partnership with Berea City Schools into the future.
And besides our organization, what other organizations participate in this program?
So our main partners as we move forward have been Berea City Schools. They've been an excellent partner. We've worked with LifeWorks Autism Services. They've been a great partner for us, as well as the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities.
Mm-hmm. And take us through a day of the training.
So a day of the training, what we do is we ask law enforcement to come in the mornings. We have 4 hours of training in the morning. That is the time for the organizations like DSANEO, the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities, and LifeWorks Autism Services. They will provide a trainer to teach law enforcement what they are experts in. You guys know this world better than we do. You work with these populations more often than we do. We want to gain the knowledge that you guys want to provide to us. So we set up our training block for each of the organizations. The officers will sit down, just like a classroom setting. We talk, we interact, we learn about the different developmental disabilities that we may interact with. And then in the afternoon session, what makes this training a little unique to anything that I've ever done in law enforcement prior to it, in the afternoon session, LifeWorks Autism Services brings in individuals with developmental disabilities, and they practice scenarios with us. So we do a traffic stop scenario, we do an arrest scenario, we do an unknown disturbance scenario. And what that looks like is we put the individuals with the developmental disabilities in a room, and we have police officers respond. We tell the police officer, hey, your call is that this is an unknown disturbance. Respond to this area and deal with the call as you would in real life. And that looks like trying to identify the people involved. That looks like trying to determine what happened and how to best resolve those problems. They take the training they had in the morning along with their years of law enforcement experience, and they get to have this real life interaction. And I think it's been great for our officers, and I've also seen great value to our participants, the individuals with the developmental disabilities. They gain an understanding and a trust and a comfort with a person in uniform and a gun and a loud radio and all of these different things that may be triggers or may be problems for them. They get to have an experience in a safe environment where they see what that looks like, they see how that works, and we're hoping that if they then have those experiences outside of that safe training environment, they're better prepared and know what to expect, and our law enforcement partners are better prepared and know what to expect.
So what do you hope the law enforcement officers gain from this training?
So the biggest thing that I think will help law enforcement, first off, is going to be recognition of an individual with an additional need. Right. So as a police officer, I respond to a call, and I don't necessarily know what I'm walking into. And it's not like every scenario that I walk up, there is somebody there to tell me, hey, this person that's in the house that is, having a behavior, destroying things, throwing things around, that person has Down syndrome or autism. There may not be somebody there to tell me that. Right. So I walk in and all I see is an adult flipping over a couch. And maybe if I don't have any prior experience, I'm going to respond and think that that person is under the influence of alcohol or drugs, or that person is just, engaging in criminal conduct. Whereas if I have this additional experience and I've seen these things in a different setting, maybe I can look at that and go, oh, maybe this person has autism, maybe this person has Down syndrome, maybe this person is in a situation where I can help in a different way, and this this wouldn't be an enforcement thing, but more of a helping situation.
Mm-hmm. So you want them to learn how to approach an individual.
Yes, absolutely.
Recognize the signs, okay. And have you, so the officers that have been through the training, have you received any feedback from them?
Yes, so anytime that I put on trainings, we ask that all of our law enforcement partners respond to me with an email with anything they liked or anything that they would like to see improve. Every single officer has been able to give me really good feedback, and the thing that I hear time and time again is that this is the most realistic training that they're getting in this area. So we can take trainings and we can watch a video, we can go through a PowerPoint and learn about different developmental disabilities or different individuals. It's a completely different and more beneficial thing to have an opportunity to be in a scenario with with people that have these developmental disabilities. And the training, as you know, we don't just run scenarios, we also have some downtime. So our officers and our law enforcement partners and our participants have an opportunity to just casually interact with each other. So law enforcement officers, oftentimes they may have very limited exposure to people with developmental disabilities at all. So an opportunity to just have a conversation and have a casual interaction, it can help them kind of gain an understanding of what somebody may need or want in different interactions.
So you're going to continue doing these trainings?
Yes, the goal is to continue to do them, and I don't see any reason why we would stop.
And anybody watching out there, police officer, if they would be interested in attending the training, it doesn't have to be just Berea or Middleburg Heights or...
So the training is very limited in space because of the nature of the training and because we have participants from the public that come in.
Can you do more trainings?
Yeah, because we have participants from the public who come in, we have to keep a very slow pace and a very close watch on all of the interactions. So that does limit our ability to the number of officers we're comfortable having in any one given training, but we do plan to continue to do the trainings, and I would encourage any of our law enforcement partners out there that are seeing this, feel free to reach out to me, and either we can try to get you into our trainings, or I'd be more than happy to try to help other organizations set up a similar program that they could run, and they can kind of see if we can get this thing to grow in different areas.
Yeah, for their principal. Okay. And so your involvement in this, how has it impacted you?
So the biggest impact that I had was just, again, getting in as that SRO position and having those daily interactions with the different individuals with different disabilities really opened my eyes to the potential that we could have and the potential positive interactions we can have with people. You learn how much they have to offer and how wonderful interactions can be if you open yourself up to them and you really give it an opportunity. And then I don't want to say it surprised me, but it was very nice to see the positive feedback from our law enforcement partners. Sometimes new in law enforcement can be a little bit scary, but police officers have come out to this training. It's something that we don't necessarily do very much of, but their positive attitude and their willingness to get involved and their willingness to interact has been very positive, and I'm very excited that our law enforcement partners have been so open to the idea.
And is there any way that the community can help?
So the biggest thing that we would ask from the community is if you are a community member, you know somebody that is in the special needs community, reach out to us. We're always looking for more participants. Getting those participants to come in, because I understand that it is also an intimidating thing for families of people with developmental disabilities to bring your family member into an unknown scenario where they're going to be interacting with law enforcement. We're going to be doing scenarios, whether it's a traffic stop or whether it's an arrest scenario or something like that. That can be very scary for your family members, and I get that. What I encourage people to think about is it's a safe environment to have this exposure and have this experience. We have trained professionals on standby to help de-escalate behaviors. We're prepared for many outcomes. If we're gonna have a negative reaction to a police officer, better to have it in our training environment than out on the road. If you and your family are traveling and you get stopped by a police officer and your loved one has a behavior because of their developmental disability, you don't want that to be the first time. You don't want that to be when you learn that they have a really negative reaction to a person in uniform. We would rather learn that in a safe training environment.
And how can someone reach you if they want?
So I provided my email. Please email me. It'll be available to the viewers. Feel free to reach out. Any questions, anything that you need from me, I'm happy to help.
Great.
Thanks
for being here today. And just working with you the past couple of years has really shed a light on what law enforcement officers do for us daily.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Thanks. We will be right back with Diane Dudziak. I'm here today with Diane Dudziak, a former police officer and now a
developmental disabilities and law enforcement specialist.
Give us some information about your background.
So I earned my master's degree in 2008 with forensic psychology, and then I was seeking a job in investigations. And while I was doing that, I had the opportunity to find law enforcement. And I did that for about 6 years. So while I was doing that, I was recognizing a miscommunication between law enforcement and so many other communities. So I had put together a training for people with disabilities.
So you saw some type of opportunity here?
Yeah, so my brother has Down syndrome and he's 36 now. For me and for many people in our community, it's very easy to see the cues they give us. But with law enforcement, what I was noticing was even on a call with someone with Down syndrome, my partner wasn't recognizing not only the person's physical features, but some of the social cues and the verbal cues and physical cues that she was giving us. And the situation was not going poorly, it's just that I had to step in because I could tell the person was not reacting well to him.
Mm-hmm. And why was this a concern for you?
So with individuals with disabilities, our parents and family and friends can get very concerned because we know how to deal with their disability and we know how to deal with their stubbornness. But with officers, the things that the people are presenting can look dangerous to us. And even a person with Down syndrome has a slight advantage because they have a lot of features on their face. But the officer I was working with was seeing this person as neurotypical, and they were getting passed over for that even with physical features on their face. Mm-hmm. So I was concerned because in the past and currently people were getting hurt because of the miss of these features and the communication cues. Mm-hmm. And that, you really have to think about that when it comes to individuals with autism who don't show any of the signs or other individuals with disabilities without physical features.
Mm-hmm. So what did you do next?
So I initially started seeking out trainings as an officer. So I looked for whatever was available in the state of Ohio, and I took a few that were directed to developmental, well, it's called special needs in that field. Unfortunately, when I went, they were kind of focused on bipolar, mental illness, and not much autism or developmental disabilities. So I created a presentation that was more realistic than the ones I had been to. So the ones that I did go to, they were specialists in developmental disabilities with no experience in law enforcement, or they were law enforcement officers with no experience with developmental disabilities. Mm-hmm. So with my education and my training and my experience with my brother, I was able to create something that was, and now my new lived experience as an officer, I was able to create something that was very realistic and then actually something officers are looking for, which is realistic de-escalation, physical tactics, and more than just a sight into law enforcement or sight into people, this community, but I've also invited parents to these trainings, so I do them on the opposite side. So parents and caregivers and SSAs and IAs can get an idea of what law enforcement is actually dealing with and why our community here is showing signs of threat to officers. Mm-hmm.
So you're doing this training now?
Yeah, so currently I have linked with Ohio Association of County Boards, and we go to all the counties around Ohio and we present to officers, but also in conjunction with developmental disability staff, so the IAs and the SSAs, because they kind of act like law enforcement in this field. They're going to go through investigations and MIs and all that kind of stuff. And I also present twice a year the Portage County Crisis Intervention Training, and I go there with my brother. Mm-hmm. He doesn't do much of a verbal training, but what he does is he sits there and gives officers experience of interacting with an individual with disabilities, because in those moments that the officers go to these calls, they're not going to see your kid on their best day or your loved one. And then I also present at the Synergy Conference a couple years ago, and we're actually going to be presenting again this year.
Now, did you have to get any type of special training or certification to do this?
No, but I from my policing, so I have plenty of training in law enforcement. I had my police officer certificate when I was a police officer, and then I did all of my trainings within the OPATA, so sexual assault, interview and interrogation, firearms, active threats, all these different trainings, as well as I have a master's degree in forensic psychology, and I'm currently working on my BCBA. So I continually look for more areas where I can improve more recent research.
And you enjoy doing this.
I really do. Yeah, I think it's like really important. My brother, you know, he made us very different as a family. You know, he changed us into a way to see people a very different way. So to me, it's very natural. When I was an officer, I think he helped me to recognize all of the different cultures of people, because growing up, you know, we had some people would make fun of us. You know, he's 36 now, so sometimes we got made fun of, and sometimes we had issues where people didn't quite understand why was he chewing on his fingers, and why does he talk like that, why does he look like that. So for me, that helped me to start seeing other people without taking judgment at first. I'm saying, maybe they're acting that way for a different reason. And as an officer, I think that made me a much better officer.
So why do you think it's so important for law enforcement to continue taking training like this?
I think, well, first of all, it's not necessarily available. We focus so much on the very important law enforcement things we have to do, crime detection and deterrence, protecting people and things, as well as like active shooters. All these things are very important. So we want to keep officers in that realm. So if most of them don't always have exposure. Like my partner, he didn't recognize it. So what was important to me is that I wanted to just bring awareness and then also education. With this training, we show them 24-hour numbers they can call to get people services that don't necessarily have them. But also, I want these folks in the hands of specialists. I want the officers to deal with officer things, and I want these folks to get back to the Board of DD, or maybe get introduced to the Board of DD. Whatever it is, they need to get off the hands of officers so officers can focus and people won't get hurt.
So when the officers arrive at a situation, the first thing they have to do is assess.
Yeah, so when they assess, they're taking everything that they know and anything they've been exposed to, everything, all the cues, and they're going to translate that into something that's meaningful to them. Is this a threat? Is this not a threat? So the people in our community, and I think all of us will know, like the family and caregivers, our folks will give off cues that you don't realize officers think are dangerous. So when we're clenching our fists, when we're stimming, some of those look very dangerous, because those are the same things people who are on drugs or alcohol are doing, and that can look dangerous. So the officer goes into defensive mode, and they're probably going to touch your person, your person you care about. And we all know if we touch a person that doesn't want to be touched, that might react in tactile defensiveness. And then this is where we get, we're on the floor, and now somebody might get hurt because your child or person you care about is going to fight back in the best way they know, and they don't know how, because how many times do we put these people in that situation? So that's really important that the officers recognize these cues as stimming or some other form
or
of
like if
coping.
they're stumbling, or
right. So if a person is stumbling, we might say, okay, that person might be drunk or on drugs. And then if they're slurring, we'll say, okay, maybe drunk or drugs. And then they smell like alcohol, so yeah, they're drunk, right? Okay. But all those things I mentioned also could be something your child does or the person you care about. The stumbling, slurring. I mean, my brother has a speech impediment because Down syndrome folks have a larger tongue. It's harder for them to say different words. And then if you have someone that's on a certain medication, they're kind of sleepy. And if someone smells like alcohol, they could also be having a diabetic reaction. So officers have to make these, even with diabetes and stuff, they have to make all of these different associations and then decide what they want to do. And a lot of times it begins with physical touch, and that's the hardest part because that's when people react poorly. So I teach officers, okay, you've already touched them. Now how do we get out of that before we hurt them or they get hurt? Yeah, de-escalation for sure.
So your idea came up to do this development training for officers. What kind of gaps will it fill in for them, like in a realistic way?
Yeah. So mostly exposure and education. So a lot of people just don't know. And these folks are in our community everywhere, right? So my brother has worked at grocery stores. He's worked at different places you serve food, and you know they're and then taking the bus. They're everywhere because before we were they didn't have as much inclusion. Our community is so inclusive now that these folks can have the regular life that they deserve. But what happens when the bus breaks down, or what happens when they lose their wallet? Now, this is a way bigger event for our individuals, because they're learning their whole life how to cope with our lives, the normative, whatever you want to call it. Every day they do what we ask them to do to stay on the social norm. So when they lose it, they're going to call the police, because we've got people being physical, we've got people crying, we've got people running or in the street. So we need officers to recognize right away some of the things they're doing may present as alcohol, drugs, behavior. But then we got to notice they don't smell like alcohol, and they aren't doing the typical alcohol thing. So how can we decipher that?
So what are some of the challenges that they face, the officers?
Mostly exposure. These guys and girls are in our community. So it is, I know we're all busy, but there is a little tiny bit of downtime when we're playing on our phones, or we're parked out doing stationary. We're doing stationary patrol sometimes, and that's very important, which is you park somewhere and you kind of make sure people recognize that you're there, so they slow down or whatever. But in those times, you can always, you know you're going to stop on your shift to go get a coffee. So what if we're at Sheets and we see a guy there working that might have a disability? Engage with them, get their name, talk to them. Now, we don't have to become best friends, but what happens is the next time you go to Sheets and there's a robbery or something, you know, this guy Frank you just met is going to be like, yo, Officer Jim, what are we doing today? And he'll be like, hey, Frank, not today. And Frank will trust him, and he'll leave him alone. And therefore, Frank's not involved, and everybody's safe. So the idea is the more exposure you have, the less interaction we're going to have with them that's negative. Because when they have a bad day, they're going to trust us. So get out there, get out of your car, get on your feet, do that, traditional community policing, and try to. And we have homes, rehabilitation homes or day homes that they stay in sometimes. Go find those homes in your community and meet them.
And you start to develop some trust.
Yeah, it's really important to develop this trust within the community of them to us and us to them. And that way we can continue the relationship, but separate the crisis part, because they're going to need us sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when an individual with development disabilities is approached by a police officer, how do they normally react?
It can be one of two things. Some of our folks, most of our folks, really love in law enforcement, right? So they're running for a hug. Our less touchy folks might run because mom and dad told them. They said, if you're bad, I'm going to call the cops. Please don't do this. We are not going to arrest your kid unless they're doing illegal things. And so if they're being bad, so one thing we would love for you to come to the lobby. Is open 24 hours a day. If your person is on a weird schedule, you can come late and just say, can you meet my kid? Or come and ask. Some officers are always willing to show off their truck or their car, canine dogs, that kind of stuff. It's important to introduce yourself, because if you have calls with the officer, which sometimes our folks are calling 911 for fun, or they're stealing stuff because they have a problem with feeling hungry, so they're going to be eating a lot, like Fragile X or all these different ones, that we're going to be introduced to these folks because of the crimes they're committing. But we have to recognize that maybe they can't help it, so we have to figure out how to be realistic. And also be, everybody has consequences. Even when these folks commit crimes, they still have to deal with the consequence, but how are we going to make it realistic and reasonable for them to understand what they did?
And you do the training with Officer Darnell.
Correct.
Yes, so, but you also do your own training, so where can someone find more information if they'd like to contact you?
Right, so right now I just use my personal information, so they'll put that up on the screen for us, or maybe we'll put it onto the page here, but it's just my name at Gmail. And what I'm working on is trying to get maybe into an LLC with my brother, and we'll get more official, but right now it's just so quick that people are picking us up that we just go where we're asked. So we'll go to city departments, but we're also going to counties, and then I go to the crisis intervention trainings.
Okay,
so,
wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Diane, I really appreciate all the work that you and Officer Darnell are doing to spread awareness about this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. Like I said, Officer Darnell and me we never knew each other. We're both doing the same thing. So just know that there's people doing it in your neighborhood. Everybody has a care for these folks, and we're really just trying to bring a different element with our experience as officers.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We'll see you next month on Something Extra.